Hello everyone. As you know, I am Dr. Deeksha Pandey, Additional Professor in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, KMC Manipal, and I am also the in charge of Urogynecology subdivision in our department. If you remember, last time we discussed a case of prolapse, and basically we discussed more about intercompartment symptoms and its management. And today we have come here to discuss a little different case. It is again a case of prolapse, but this patient presented more of enterocoele and posterior wall, you can say, or apical defect. So Dr. Poornaveni, who is a junior resident in our department, will be presenting the history, examination, and her management. And to moderate or facilitate the case, I have with me Dr. Richa Choksi, who is an assistant professor in the department. So if you all are ready, Poorna, we can start the case.
A 55-year-old lady, Mrs. X, belonging to the middle socioeconomic class, hailing from Udupi, came to the hospital to the Department of Urogynecology and has been having complaints of mass descending per vaginum for the past 3 months. History of presenting illness. The patient was apparently normal 3 months ago when she noticed a mass descending per vaginum, which was hindering her walking. And also she had complaints of lower back pain that was radiating to her lower limbs. There was no history of any postmenopausal bleeding, no history of any suggestive of any stress urinary incontinence, and there was no history of any loss of appetite, loss of weight, and no history of any recent onset of cough or constipation. She had visited a hospital at Bangalore 2 months ago for the same complaints and was advised a vaginal hysterectomy. She came to us for a second opinion. In the month of July, she came to Kasturba Hospital, and the scan done here showed the uterus measuring 4.2 into 3.7 centimeters, retroverted, and the anterior wall subserosal fibroid measuring 2.6 into 1 centimeters. Her menstrual history: she has been postmenopausal for the past 1.5 years, and even prior to this, her cycles were regular and her bleeding was within normal limits. She has been married for the past 33 years, and she's para 2, living 2. Both were normal vaginal deliveries, and she was sterilized 26 years ago. Marital history: at present she's not sexually active. However, there was no history of any coital difficulties in the past. Medical history: she has a progressive hearing loss for the past 20 years, but there is no history of any diabetes, hypertension, thyroid disease, or bronchial asthma. Surgical history: there is no history of any abdominal or pelvic floor surgeries.
So your patient, she presented with a short history of 3 to 4 months of prolapse. So what things you should keep in mind when patient has such a short history?
Ma'am, firstly, according to the history, she might not have noticed the mass descending per vaginum because in cases of first degree and second degree UV descent, most of the women are not able to make out the mass descending unless and until it becomes a third degree and procedentia further. The other causes that could be possible are a sudden onset of increase in intra-abdominal pressure, ma'am. That could be because of ovarian malignancies leading to ascites or an abdominal tumor, and recent onset of cough, which is and even constipation. And so in cases of cough, we have to also think about any lung malignancies. So all this has to be ruled out before we proceed forward with that diagnosis.
So we'll just, you told exactly the 2 reasons, and one more reason is there. What is that reason? That maybe you said that she has attained her menopause just 1.5 years ago.
Yes.
So maybe till she was premenopausal, she had some weakness or trauma of the tissues, but good estrogen was holding it all together.
Yes.
But now she's not having estrogen also, so everything has fallen down. Okay, but what I want you to understand that though what you said is the most common story, that patient would not have realized that she's having prolapse. When it became third or fourth and cumbersome or bothersome for the patient, then only she presented to the hospital. But we should not think it like this. So what we want to give a very important message, that whenever a patient presents with a short history of prolapse, always rule out malignancy or some acute condition which can be life-threatening for the patient. Because you know that prolapse is not a life-threatening condition. Okay, so patient should not have a bad outcome because of some other things which we have missed out while we are just focusing on prolapse. So a short history, it is very important to rule out what all reasons you said, specifically the malignancy of the abdomen, and lungs. And one more, we were discussing the other day, neurological cause. You have to ask an acute history whenever. So some old women will just fall down in bathroom and they will have spinal cord injury, which they would not be able to recollect when you ask or when you are giving history to you. So it's very important when you ask all those complaints, not in every case of prolapse, but definitely when the history is short. Okay.
Now, so your patient is presented with back pain and difficulty in walking and pain in the thighs. Why so in patient with prolapse having the back pain?
Usually when prolapse is associated with an enterocoele, there is a dragging sensation in the lower abdomen, and most commonly these patients present with lower back pain that is radiating to the lower.
So what will be the common symptoms of enterocoele?
One is symptoms is like the dragging type of sensation in the lower abdomen, and the other thing is mass descending per vaginum. And
so the reason of pain, what you are saying correctly, that dragging sensation is because all the bubble, which is like I don't know how many meters, lot of bubble is there, which actually starts descending through the loose pouch of Douglas, starts herniating. The cause of pain is because of the stretching of uterosacral ligaments.
Yes.
Uterosacral ligaments have neurovascular bundles. When they get stretched, that's why patient will have pain. Otherwise, we should not have pain associated with prolapse in any other situation. It is otherwise a painless condition.
Patients will have this dragging sensation, feeling of heaviness.
Yes,
that will be
yes.
most common symptoms.
Symptoms of the enterocoele. So if you look at the enterocoele per se, the symptoms are most non-specific. Like anterior compartment, we know urinary symptoms. Rectocele, we know constipation. Okay, then decubitus ulcer, we know postmenopausal bleeding or intermenstrual bleeding. But if you say most inconspicuous kind of symptoms are with enterocoele, but the thing is, this is maybe the most important compartment which we have to note down whether it is correct or not, because this is very important in management. If you remove the uterus and do hysterectomy, later we'll discuss this part in more detail, and just repair without taking care of this enterocoele sac, then definitely patient will present with recurrence or wall prolapse in form of enterocoele. Because when uterus is also not there and we are erect posture people, so all the burden of the intra-abdominal content, which is a huge proportion, very heavy bubble which is there, it is just creates all pressure in the pouch of Douglas, which is already loose. And if you have not taken care, if you have not removed the hernial part of this, if you have not tightened it, then patient will present with recurrence. Okay. So the message from this is, though enterocoele is the most benign type of presentation, you will feel like it is non-specific. Sometimes you might tell the patient that it is not important, but while you are examining the patient, if you leave that and while you are doing all the repairs, you don't repair that defect, it is a short sign that patient will come with a recurrence. Okay?
Moving forward with the examination. On general examination, she is a moderately built female with a BMI of 23.2. There are no signs of pallor, icterus, no signs of lymphadenopathy or edema. On her abdomen, there is no signs of ascites. The abdomen is soft, non-tender, and there is no mass palpable. On local examination, there are no signs of excoriation. A 3 cross 2 centimeter mass is protruding from the vagina. Cough impulse is positive, and there is no evidence of stress urinary incontinence. On first speculum, we could see a 3rd degree UV prolapse associated with a grade 2 of cystocele and grade 2 rectocele, and also enterocele was present, which was protruding 2 centimeters up to the hymen. On per vaginum, bilateral fornices were free, the uterus was retroverted, however normal in size, and the POD appeared free. The levator ani tone was graded as 2 according to the modified Oxford scoring, and the perineal body measured around 2 into 2 centimeters.
So did you do POPQ?
Yes, ma'am. According to POPQ, this would fall under class 2.
2 it will?
2 or
3. Okay.
So, presence of enterocoele.
So every time, maybe as we always discuss, maybe for a clinical case presentation, POPQ is not that important, but importance is maybe for this case it was important because you have actually told that it was enterocoele was plus 2 centimeters beyond the introitus or the hymen. So this kind of classification or giving a number or quantifying the prolapse will be important in this case. Because like you should not miss What is the extent of enterocoele?
enterocoele.
Yes.
Ma'am, summarizing the case,
Okay.
she's a 55-year-old lady, para 2 living 2, postmenopausal, with third degree UV prolapse, grade 2 cystocele and rectocele, and enterocele is also present now. With POC of class 3, she was
Stage, it is called stage 3. So one thing I think which we missed in the history part, she said that her ultrasound was done and it shows. So do you think for diagnosis of prolapse, do we need to have an ultrasound? Do we need to have imaging of any kind?
Ma'am, prolapse by itself is a clinical diagnosis.
Yes.
But however,
so repeat it again.
Yeah,
Prolapse is
a clinical diagnosis. But however, for the complications that prolapse may lead to, you have to always pre-operatively evaluate the patient with imaging studies such as ultrasound, and not only just transvaginal ultrasound for the pelvic area, but also abdomen and pelvis both should be evaluated properly.
What do you want to say?
With such short history of prolapse?
Yes. Okay. And I hope you have examined her for all lymph nodes and abdominal examination to rule out masses and ascites. And yes, like Richa said, that all these things, associated pathology should be ruled out. Anything else, only in prolapse, will you see any organ specifically?
Ma'am, the kidneys are of specific importance because in cases of prolapse, as the UV descent is there, the uterine arteries are also pulled downwards. And because of this can lead to the ureters becoming kinked, and this can lead to complications like hydronephrosis.
Chronic cases of prolapse, they will present with hydronephrosis.
Yes.
And also, if there is a presence of hydronephrosis, that is an indication to operate on her in the immediate.
Yeah, because you might lose the kidneys if it is kinking the ureters.
Yes.
And it is very important to have a pre-op documentation also. Specifically in cases whenever we are doing pelvic surgeries, because of close relation of ureter with the structures we are working on, I think it is very, very important for all the gynecologists to have a pre-operative documentation at least of kidney, status of kidney and hydronephrosis, because we have burned our hands in past missing all those things. So I think it is an advice for all the youngsters that whenever you are operating on any pelvic organ, you are going to touch uterus, you remember that ureter is very close to it. So pre-operative, maybe you have not touched the ureter, patient was having pathology before only, and patient can sue you for they can blame you for kidney that hydronephrosis has happened before. So very important. And specifically when we are treating vaginal prolapses, even just when we are doing vaginal hysterectomy, what is the incidence of ureteric damage during a vaginal hysterectomy?
In vaginal hysterectomy, we are very highly prone to we are prone to injure the uterus because of the close proximity with the other structures that we are handling. And the incidence is around 5%. Up to 5%.
And specifically, we'll come on this little later. But like enterocele, tell here only, what is the management of enterocele? Specifically, when you said management of enterocele.
So we can do Meckel's scaldoplasty, and following, otherwise we can do high peritonealization, or the high suspension of the uterosacrals can also be done.
Okay. So what is the risk when we are dealing with uterosacrals? Basically, in Meckel's also we are taking use of uterosacrals. The ureters are in very close proximity.
So, when we take a bite in the uterosacrals, we are actually pulling the ligament forward, and in such cases, we are not going to the chances of directly injuring the ureters are less. But however, when we pull it forward, there can be a kink of the ureters, and which can, as we said, lead to hydronephrosis.
So actually, if you see in normal, when you are doing high peritonealization, and then the second thing, when you are doing Meckel's also, actually if you look at the anatomy, you are more close to ureter as compared to when we are doing high uterosacral ligament fixation, because in high uterosacral suspension, we are dealing with the sacral part. Here we are dealing with the cervical part. And how far? What is the distance when it is sacral part of uterosacral with ureter?
Around, 3 centimeters.
3 centimeters.
But however, the
cervical
region it's around 1.5 centimeters.
1.5 centimeters. So we are actually safe. We will not injure it directly. That risk is little lesser. But the more risk is, as Poorna exactly correctly said, that when we are taking a bite, because peritoneum is in continuity. and we are taking a bite through the peritoneum, and when we are pulling it down and tying it with posterior vaginal wall, actually if we have taken a lot of peritoneum towards ureter, there is a chance that the ureter might get pulled towards posterior vagina and get kinked there.
So ma'am, that's why we tend to take the bite from the lateral to the medial.
Very good.
So that because when we are going to take a bite, we have more control over the direction of the needle and where we're going to.
Where we have more control when we enter.
Yes.
Then
so
exit point is.
So we'll be away from the ureters, and so we can be sure.
So it looks like you have seen such procedure being done.
Yes.
Very good. Then what else, Richard? You want to ask questions regarding.
So one you said one is high uterosacral ligament fixation, and second is mechalsculpoplasty.
Yes.
So can you elaborate a little about it?
So ma'am, in mechalsculpoplasty we have internal and external. The only difference by surgery aspect in internal and external is that the material that we use. In internal you can use a non-absorbable suture such as proline, whereas in external the chances and we should not use non-absorbable because there is the knot might remain and this can lead to further infection.
Where are we taking the bite?
Yes ma'am. So in cases of internal, the bites are taken from one side of the uterosacrals, then the rectal part of fat, the opposite uterosacrals, and this is it. And but whereas in it's time and
2 to 3 sutures
yes,
we have to take to completely obliterate the sac.
But whereas in external, we also take along with these, we take the vaginal vault also, and specifically we should have an inverted V incision over the vaginal vault and
posterior vagina, redundant portion of posterior vagina you cut
yes,
in a V-shaped or inverted V-shaped fashion, and then take from the midline.
Yes.
Okay, so there when the first bite has gone through the vagina, then obviously the knot will come in the vagina. Yes. And we don't want to keep a knot in the vagina with non-absorbable suture because it will always remain there. It will be a cause of erosion, infections, and irritation.
Yes. And what about hyperpolarization?
So high peritonealization usually we use for prophylaxis rather than the treatment.
So in all the cases of vaginal hysterectomy, when we are operating, we always do hyperpolarization. So that the POD is supported.
Yeah, because as soon as you remove the uterus with ligaments, there is a lot of space.
And by doing this, we are decreasing the chances of wall prolapse.
Yes. So actually, this is one of the questions in PG exam. You will get theory questions that tell with vaginal hysterectomy what preventive measures you want to so that patient doesn't present with wall prolapse.
So how will you manage this patient?
Ma'am,
have you already managed?
Yes ma'am, we have operated on her and we have done an anterior, we have done vaginal hysterectomy with pelvic floor repair, anterior colporrhaphy and posterior perineal colporrhaphy along with high suspensions of the uterosacrals.
So I keep on telling in all the case discussions and to all children and all PGs that this is global term, pelvic floor repair you should avoid using, because we are compartment based. And see, it is not a blanket treatment for all patients. That's why we are taking so much time and energy to evaluate properly so that we do not miss on important things and so you have to tell whatever generalized terms we should avoid.
Anterior colporrhaphy, posterior perineal colporrhaphy,
and the uterosacral suspension and vaginal hysterectomy.
Yes.
So these were the surgeries which were done. Okay. So during surgery also, we discussed that in uterosacral the chances of kinking of ureter is high. So I think it is not, it is just impossible not to have a complication. If you are operating, I think you will have complications sometime or the other. If somebody says that that particular person did never have a complication, that means either they have not operated on any patient or they are lying. Only 2 diagnoses are there. So as a surgeon, you should not be scared of complication. Complications will happen. But just the difference between a good surgeon and not so good surgeon is that you should be able to identify. You try to minimize it with whatever you can. That is the first thing. If it happens in peroperative, on table only, you should be able to recognize and rectify it. If it presents late, as early as possible, you should be able to identify and have a watch. It should be running in your mind that this procedure I have done in this patient, so these are the chances of complication, because a surgeon will be the best person to judge that. Okay, so this is the thing. So tell me, you said that there are high risk. What is the risk? Do you have any idea? If I ask you incidence wise, what is the risk of ureteric kinking during high uterosacral ligament suspension?
Up to 5.
5 though,
For
which are
ureteric,
told for
injuries.
Ureteric injuries.
injuries,
Vaginal
vaginal hysterectomy. Here the risk is from 1%, it can be less also, to 11%. So little higher risk of ureteric kinking is there. Okay.
What will you do? What measures will you adopt?
Ma'am, one, when we are intraoperatively, like preoperatively, we can give them stainers of body fluids, like pyridium can be given. And so this will only help us identify if there is an actual injury to the ureteric structures or the bladder. And so if there is fluid which is high colored, like orange, so then we'll be able to identify that we have injured. And so identification will
So
help
I
us.
think yes. So first thing, which is for the beginners, the important thing is it will stain urine, as
Yes,
Poorna
sure.
said. But it is more. So many doubts I keep on getting, that when you are doing cystocele repair, how do you know that, like, we have, and it's very scary. Usually we do hydrodissection, and when you are dissecting the plane, some fluid will come out, and the heart stops pounding that time. That is the bladder injured? Is it urine? Is it urine? So it's a very easy way. Just give 2 tablets of pyridium one night before to the patient, and just forget about it. Most of the time it will be normal adrenaline and saline what you have injected. And if by chance that orange color fluid comes, you have identified it, and it is easy to repair the uterus and vaginal surgeries. Okay, and the healing is also very good. So there is nothing to panic. In ureteric context, you said that this pyridium. So how do we see in ureteric?
Ma'am, in such cases, we can do a cystoscopy post
Yes.
after the suspension of the uterosacral, and in this we have to look at the ureteric
So vaginally,
orifices.
without doing, though sometimes in cases of silencia, we see ureters running alongside the uterine arteries, uterine vessels. But usually it is in vaginal surgeries we do not see. In abdominal we see ureters clearly. But here there is no way to see, easy way to see ureters. So as you said, what can we do?
Cystoscopy can be done post intraoperatively itself. Just after we finish the procedure, we can do a cystoscopy, and we can look at the ureteric orifices to see if the urine input from the uterus,
flux of urine.
if flux of urine, if it's present or not.
If it is not present, that means there is some problem.
So all cases of high uterosacral ligaments fixation have to be followed by cystoscopy.
It's a must, because the incidence is up to 11% of kinking, which is high. So you cannot leave the patient till you have identified a good urinary efflux and cystoscopy. This you should not do that. By chance, if you think that you have this from one side, you feel that ureter has got kinked, then what do?
We have used the sutures and we have left this knots in the vagina.
So here, everything is open. You
Yes,
have still not tied.
Yes.
You can just remove that suture and the kinking will go away. So nothing. You don't have to do stenting. You don't have to call urologist also, because you know that you have not injured the ureter. You have just pulled the peritoneum a little bit more, which is kinking the ureter. Now I will give you another situation. Everything went on well. Patient was shifted to the ward, and second post-operative day, Dr. Poorna goes for rounds, and patient is complaining, I am having right-sided loin pain. What would you do? You will give her analgesics and say it's okay?
No, ma'am. First, we have to on palpation.
What will we think?
One, it could be like loin pain is mostly suggestive of kidney or ureteric problems. So we can do an ultrasound post-operatively also and see if there is any hydronephrosis that has been a new onset, or compare it with the pre-operative ultrasound to know if there is any change. And in case we do find out that there is a new onset of hydronephrosis, then we can just release the sutures that we have put on one side, which will not hinder the operation that we've done, but it will help to release the pain that she's having.
So 1 or 2 sutures you can just remove and keep on see what is the effect. Usually we tie 2 sutures, or some people take 3 bites on one side. So those sutures, and that's why it is important. So Richa, when we take this only absorbable kind of sutures, so that the knots is at the vagina. If you had taken the problem, if you have used non-absorbable sutures, because then you have to bury the knots. Those knots also, this is one of the prophylactic measure also, that when you are doing in the beginning, maybe some first 100 uterosacral ligament fixation, don't use a non-absorbable suture. Use absorbable suture and put the knots inside the vagina, so that in post-op, if you feel that there is hydronephrosis or you feel kinkiness, You just pull that knot, take a scissors, cut those under speculum examination, under vision and patient. And the other two knots are there holding the other uterosacral. Maybe the vagina will become a little asymmetrical, but still that's good. Okay, you are not cutting all the, your surgery is not going on waste.
Yes.
Okay, so this can be done. So any other test you can do? What is the role of serum creatinine, or before that urine output? How important is measuring urine output?
Ma'am, post-operatively, yes, we have to keep a close watch on the hourly urine output. It should be at least minimum of more than 50. That is what is our cutoff where we keep it. And also serum creatinine, if there is a sudden...
But let me tell you that you should not be very
Very
happy that the urine output,
Because
the negative predictive value of measuring urine output is not that great, because there are two kidneys. So when one kidney is not functioning very good, the other kidney takes over and the urine output will be maintained. It will not go into a shutdown kind of phase. So you should not be. So the positive predictive value, if good output is there, you can be happy. But if but every time when the output is inadequate, you should not be happy that, like, you should not
be relaxed and completely
forget about that, because the other kidney might be compensating. The other thing you said, that serum creatinine.
Ma'am, an increase in 3 times the preoperative value will be alarming for us, because that means that the kidneys have been, there is a immediate acute attack on the kidneys.
This is new thing which I learned, and I'm very happy that you told me. Okay, so it has to become 3 times.
Otherwise, we can. It doesn't require any immediate intervention. But we just have to keep her on a follow-up and keep doing. After a month, we can call her back for a serum creatinine to repeat the one.
So you have to be very careful when you are interpreting these results. So in post-operative patient, any post-operative, even if you have operated on her stomach or gallbladder, if you repeat serum creatinine and if you start comparing the pre-op value and the post-op value, there will be some difference. Because so much change, stress-related change, anesthetic drug-related changes go on in the body of the lady, that it is very difficult to get exactly the same value. Okay, yes. So you should not jump onto conclusions. But I also learned a very good thing actually today. Richard, did you know that 3 times it has to be more? Okay, so it's learning every now and then. I'm happy, Poorna. Thank you for this. Okay, so so if 3 times serum creatinine value is high, then you have to be. That is a sign of alert or alarm. But otherwise, as Poorna said, then we can wait and watch. I think that's a good point I learned today. So anything else, Richa? I think with this happiness of learning, we can finish this case discussion. So, so we discussed something about enterocoele. So important thing is, if I have to summarize, important things is symptoms of enterocoele are very benign and very non-specific. But when you have to, your mind should be working, because when your mind doesn't know, eyes don't see. So you should know that they are very non-specific kind of symptoms. But when patient says that there is dragging sensation, pain, always think of uterosacral pulling and enterocoele. Why it is important? Because if you do not manage it now when you are doing hysterectomy, maybe you have ignored it at the time of examination and you have not instructed your junior to take care of that properly, then patient might come up with recurrence. Okay. And anything else you want to tell, Richard?
Symptoms plus diagnosis is important. POCU is important in case of enterocoele, and then proper management.
Proper management. And management also, high uterosacral suspension is a good way to do it. Even Metcalfe's, in our experience, we have seen that even Metcalfe's culturoplasty works very good for these patients. So, and post-operatively, but you have to be very careful about flank pain, most importantly, and hydronephrosis. And one more important thing, I keep on telling it again and again, that please, as a gynecologist, for all cases, whenever you are operating in the pelvic area, in the uterus, and 150, 200 rupees don't matter that much, but it will save you from a lot of legal issues later on if you have missed one case also. So it's you can always get one radiology abdomen, though we are doing all transvaginal sonography, but there is no harm in having a documented abdominopelvic scan by a radiologist to compare later on. Will save you a lot of time and energy and mental peace later. With these few messages, thank you so much. And if you want to see the surgery, this patient surgery has been uploaded on the YouTube channel a week ago. You can go there and watch. I will post the link below also. And then thank you, Poorna.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.